on the ferry to get her to the hospital down at Green Sulphur. But he finally, somehow or the other, did deliver the baby. And he was so tired and so weary and so scared, the doctor was, that he got sick. And Bernie and me were in the bedroom, in the bed, but I wasn't asleep. I was listening to all that going on, and them talking and working. And he got so sick that Dad brought him and told him to lay down in the bed. And he got in the bed with me and my sister, so sick, and my dad waiting on him, putting cold rags on his, washcloths on his head and all of that. And I've joked many times that at 7 years old I slept with the first physician. But it really wasn't funny, because when daylight came and the time came that they could go across the river and catch the train to go take her to the hospital, they took her and the baby both to the hospital, because the baby was in a bad shape. His ears were cut from the delivery, from instruments the doctor had to use, and my sister was so torn up, and my sister, because they had no antibiotics back in those days and things to treat anyone with, she was in the hospital about 6 weeks, and they kept the baby there to be with her in the room. And there was a black lady that was a nurse that sat in a rocking chair by my sister's bed and rocked the baby a lot of the time and tried to comfort her, because she was so grieved over losing her husband. And there she had the little baby. And really they thought she was going to die too. They finally pulled my sister through and the baby through, and they came home to Mom's and Dad's house. And that was my first experience as a small child like that, of learning how to be a second mother, a mother to that little boy, that little baby boy. It was like I became a nurturer, because going through all that Jessie went through, she almost became paralyzed from her waist down, and had to walk with crutches and a cane for a right good while before she ever could get on her feet and get straightened up. In the meantime, Andrew, the baby, got what the doctors call sleeping sickness. And he just lay there like he didn't know anything. But my Aunt Sally said, "I know the kid's got pneumonia." And she came in the kitchen, started frying onions in a frying pan, and made poultices and laid it on the baby's chest and back. And she took him over and doctored him while Mom and Dad tried to take care of my sister. And she pulled him through. and he got over whatever it was he had. So this was a great experience for me at my age, in learning about death and about serious illnesses, and then how people took care of one another when tragedies happened. And it seemed like it set up a pattern of my life, because I can look back now to that time in my life, and it was just like that I felt like the Lord had put me here on earth for a special person, and I was to be, and I was always present when something like that happened, and I had to join in and be a nurturer and a helper. And it set up a pattern in my life that I've carried out through my whole life. Through many tragedies in our family and in my husband's family also. Well, after 5 years that my sister was a widow, she met a man. He was a bachelor. He had never been married. He was a real fine man, he had been taking care of his parents. He had been in the war. He worked in the paramedics. And his name was Glenn Judy. She married him. He'd been taking care of his mother that was bedridden. After she died, Jesse married him. And they made a home together. And that's the only father that Andrew really knew. And he really loved him. And then when Andrew became 7 years old, Glenn got sick and they had put him in a hospital. And Jesse brought Andrew home to Mom and Dad again. And there I was taking him back and forth to school, watching over him and looking after him there. And it was almost like that he always thought of me as his sister. He never thought of me as his aunt, ever. He always thought I was his sister because I had ministered to him all that time, all through those young years. But when Glenn went into the hospital, he had appendicitis, and they had ruptured, and he had gotten peritonitis. They had no antibiotics, nothing to save him with, and he died. They did the surgery, and my sister had hired a nurse to sit with him that night and watch after him that night. And she went across the street to a hotel to lay down and go to sleep. And the next morning, he was dead. The nurse admitted that in the night, she got sleepy and laid down on the bed across from him, and she didn't know he had died till she woke up in the morning. And the doctor said that the reason he died, he filled up with gas, and it smothered his heart. If she had been alert and really called the doctor in, they could have put a tube in him and the gas would have escaped, and he might have saved his life. Well, there my sister and my nephew was again back with my mother and dad, and with me and my youngest sister again. And you can begin to see how the pattern of my life began to follow right on through. That I was to be always caring about other people. I didn't have time to think about myself. I needed to always be thinking about other people and what they were going through and try to relieve them of their pain. And I know that somehow or the other that God was in that. Because when I was 8 years old, going to school myself, somehow or the other I had made two grades in 1 year, because I had already been in the first grade a half a year, and I started back in the first grade, and I wasn't in there but a few weeks till they saw that I didn't belong in there, and they put me over in the second grade. And then it wasn't very long till they put me up in the third grade. They figured that's where I belonged, and I was doing well, and they put me in the third grade. And one evening I came out from school. The school was right across the street from the Baptist church, right across the road from the Baptist church. It was a dirt road with a wooden sidewalk from the church and the school home. And I came out from the school, and the church door was kind of open. I could see that it was standing open, and the organ was playing in that church. And I thought, now who in the world is in that church playing the organ here on a Friday evening? And all the other kids was running on, playing and running on home. And I went up those steps, and it was a pretty steep flight of steps, because up there in that mountain area you built churches and houses wherever you could. And the front part of that church, there was a kind of a long, steep steps up there. And I went up there and I thought, I'm going to peep